In the quiet corners of American history, there are stories that never rest. Whispers of terror, of crimes so twisted and elusive, they haunt investigators and civilians alike for generations. Among these dark tales, one stands out not just for the horror it unleashed, but for the way it captivated an entire nation: the story of the Zodiac Killer. It begins in a time of change. The late 1960s were alive with hope and rebellion. Young people marched for peace. Music echoed with dreams of love and freedom. But in Northern California, beneath the peace signs and summer sunshine, something darker was brewing. A shadow was watching, waiting, planning. The name Zodiac would eventually become one of the most feared in America. But before the world knew him, he was just a phantom, a man with a gun and a plan. His victims were ordinary people: teenagers on a date, a college student walking alone, a taxi driver at the end of his shift. Random, unpredictable, and that was part of the terror. There was no pattern, no clear motive, only violence and the chilling certainty that he would strike again. The first known murders happened on December 20th, 1968. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, two high school sweethearts, parked along Lake Herman Road in Benicia, California. It was their first real date. They were just teenagers, full of hope, maybe a little nervous, like any young couple on a cold December night. But what should have been a quiet evening ended in horror. Around 10:15 p.m., a car pulled up beside them. Moments later, shots rang out in the darkness. David was shot in the head at close range. Betty Lou was shot 5 times in the back as she ran. There were no witnesses, no solid leads, just shell casings from a .22 caliber weapon, and 2 young lives ended in cold blood. 7 months later, on the night of July 4th, 1969, another couple became victims. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were sitting in a parked car at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, just miles from the previous murder site. Around midnight, another car approached. A man stepped out, shined a flashlight into their car, and opened fire. Darlene was killed. Michael survived, though badly wounded. Then came something even more chilling. At 12:40 a.m., the Vallejo Police Department received a phone call. A calm, emotionless male voice said, "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you'll find kids in a brown car. They've been shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." Police traced the call to a phone booth just blocks from the police station. It was a bold move, a deliberate message. The killer wasn't hiding. He wanted to be known, and he wasn't finished. Just a few weeks later, 3 newspapers received nearly identical letters, each written in a strange, stiff handwriting. Each letter began the same way: "Dear editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." Enclosed in each envelope was 1/3 of a mysterious cipher, made of symbols and strange characters. The killer demanded the newspapers publish the ciphers, or he would kill again. The message was clear: he wanted attention. He was playing a game, a deadly one. The cipher was cracked by a schoolteacher and his wife. It revealed a disturbing message: "I like killing people because it is so much fun." It wasn't about money. It wasn't about revenge. For the Zodiac, murder was a form of entertainment. Then came Lake Berryessa on September 27, 1969. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, both college students, were enjoying a sunny afternoon by the lake. As they relaxed on a blanket, a man appeared. He wore a black hood with a white circle and cross on the chest, his infamous symbol. He held a gun and claimed he was an escaped convict. He bound their wrists with pre-cut clothesline. Then, without warning, he stabbed Brian 6 times and Cecilia 10 times. Afterward, he walked to Brian's car and calmly wrote a message on the door. The dates of his previous attacks, the time, and the words, "by knife." He then called the Napa police from a payphone, speaking in that same flat, emotionless voice. Cecilia died 2 days later. Brian survived. And once again, the killer had left behind a message, a symbol, a phone call. He wanted everyone to know it was him. Just 2 weeks later, the Zodiac struck again. this time in the heart of San Francisco. On October 11, 1969, Paul Stein, a cab driver, picked up a passenger in the theater district. The ride was ordinary, until the car stopped at the corner of Washington and Cherry Streets in the upscale neighborhood of Presidio Heights. There, the passenger pulled out a gun and shot Stein in the head. Then, strangely, he tore off a piece of Stein's shirt and walked away. At first, police didn't connect the killing to the Zodiac, but then, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. Inside was the blood-stained piece of Stein's shirt, and another message from the Zodiac: "I am the murderer of the taxi driver." He bragged that police had almost caught him but let him go because they were looking for the wrong man. And then, a new, more terrifying threat. He would shoot children as they got off a school bus. Panic swept the Bay Area. Parents were terrified. Police were overwhelmed. And the Zodiac seemed to be in complete control. His letters continued, each more bizarre and taunting than the last. He included new ciphers, drawings, bomb threats, and strange references to musicals like The Mikado. In one letter, he included a diagram for a homemade bomb. In another, he complained that people weren't wearing the Zodiac buttons he had requested. He wanted fame, power, and he was willing to kill for it. Over time, more cases began to surface, cases that might be connected. In 1963, in Santa Barbara, a young couple named Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were shot and killed on a beach. Their killer used .22 caliber ammunition, the same type the Zodiac would later use. They were bound and murdered execution style. The similarities were too strong to ignore. Then, in 1966, in Riverside, college student Sherry Jo Bates was brutally stabbed to death near her campus library. Months later, letters began arriving, signed with a mysterious symbol. The letters taunted police, saying, "She had to die. There will be more." Years later, the Zodiac himself would write, "They found my Riverside activity." Again, a disturbing link. And what about the woman named Kathleen Johns? In March 1970, she was driving with her baby when a man in another car signaled her to pull over. He claimed her wheel was loose. When she stopped, he tampered with her car. Then, he offered her a ride. But as they drove, he became more threatening. Kathleen managed to escape with her baby, and later identified him as the man in the Zodiac police sketch. Weeks later, the Zodiac sent a letter describing a rather interesting ride with a woman and her baby. Was he telling the truth? Was it another game? Nobody knew for sure. But the fear was real. As the months passed, the Zodiac sent more ciphers. Some were cracked, others remain unsolved. He claimed he had killed 37 people. Police could only confirm 7. Was he lying? Or were there more victims, still unfound? In 1974, the letters suddenly stopped. The last one was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, signed The Red Phantom. After that, silence. Over the decades, hundreds of suspects have been investigated. Names like Arthur Leigh Allen, Richard Gaikowski, and Earl Van Best Jr. have all been suggested. DNA has been tested, handwriting analyzed, but nothing has stuck. The Zodiac's true identity remains a mystery. In 2020, a team of amateur codebreakers cracked one of his unsolved ciphers, the so-called 340 cipher. It didn't reveal his name. Instead, it mocked the idea of being caught. It read, "I am not afraid of the gas chamber." Even in a message solved decades later, his arrogance and cruelty shined through. The Zodiac killer wasn't just a murderer. He was a manipulator, a puzzle maker, and a master of fear. He turned the media into his stage, the public into his audience, and the police into his unwilling chess opponents. His crimes changed the way America looked at serial killers. Before the Zodiac, the idea of a murderer writing to the press, taunting police, and seeking fame was nearly unheard of. After him, it became a terrifying blueprint for others to follow. Today, the case is still officially open. Files remain in evidence rooms. Cryptographers still try to crack his final ciphers. Amateur detectives continue to pore over maps, letters, and clues. And the question still hangs in the air like a fog that never lifts. Who was the Zodiac? Was he someone's neighbor? A teacher? A postal worker? Did he walk past people on the street unnoticed? Did he live a full life, unknown and untouched by justice? Or is he still out there, watching, knowing he got away with it? Until his name is known and justice is served, the Zodiac Killer will remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. And in the end, maybe that's what he wanted all along. Not just to kill, but to be remembered. Forever. We've just scratched the surface of time. If you want to keep exploring history's hidden corridors, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep navigating the eras with us.